The story kicks off with a mechanic named Johnny, who spends his days grinding away at a small auto shop. Then one day his girlfriend Beth comes to see him and drops the exact news Johnny had been dreading for a while. Beth tells him, "I want to break up with you." Okay, if it's your first time coming to our channel, please give us a like, subscribe and turn your notification bell to notify you when we drop recaps of both old and new fascinating movie. Now back to the movie. Johnny's girlfriend wants someone who can give her the security of staying together for a lifetime, and Johnny is always dodging that kind of talk. The truth is, Johnny is absolutely terrified of marriage. Basically, he grew up without a dad and always felt like his father intentionally walked out on him and his mom. That fear has completely settled into his mind and is holding him back from starting a family of his own. But Beth is totally exhausted from waiting around, so she pins the entire reason for the breakup squarely on Johnny. Deep down though, she is leaving because she feels like Johnny isn't going anywhere in life, that he will literally die broke. Johnny is definitely heartbroken when Beth leaves, but he decides he is just going to take care of his mom and stay perfectly happy with his ordinary, simple life. That night Johnny hits up a bar where he usually hangs out with his buddies. Now he is up on stage belting out a song at the top of his lungs like a totally heartbroken lover. Suddenly a woman walks into the bar and her eyes immediately lock onto Johnny. After the song wraps up, she walks over to him and introduces herself as Prudence. Prudence explains that she is an advisor to the Duke of Glaswick over in England. After that, she hands Johnny a plane ticket and tells him to go meet the Duke. Not only that, but she whips out an old birth certificate proving that Johnny is actually the Duke's real son. Seeing this, Johnny is completely stunned and just shoves the paper right back at her. Johnny says he has absolutely zero desire to meet a guy who abandoned his family 30 years ago. The very next morning Johnny goes straight to see his mom, Dottie, demanding to know the truth. When his mom realizes he already knows way too much, she figures she can't hide it anymore. So she finally opens up and tells her story. She tells Johnny all about his dad. Back when Johnny's mom and William, the Duke of Glaswick, were young, they met and completely fell in love with each other. But when William's family flat out refuses to accept their marriage, the two of them run away together. William had promised Johnny's mom that he would leave everything behind just to be with her. But the heavy pressure from his powerful family eventually drags him right back. All of this completely breaks Dottie's heart and she calls off the wedding. But a short time later she finds out she is pregnant. She tries reaching out to William to tell him about the baby, sending him a ton of letters, but she never gets a single reply. Figuring William has completely forgotten about her, she decides she is going to raise her son all by herself. Now she tells Johnny to go meet William so he can finally get to know the father he never got to meet. Listening to his mom, Johnny makes his way to the massive, gorgeous palace that the Duke of Glaswick calls home. Prudence welcomes him there and gives him a quick little tour of the palace, showing him a bunch of rooms. A little while later she takes him into the Duke's study room and tells him to wait there. She also makes sure to remind him not to touch absolutely anything. But the exact second she steps out, Johnny grabs an old fencing sword and starts playing around with it. Shortly after, William walks in. The father and son look insanely alike. Even the way they talk and their mannerisms seem exactly the same. When Johnny realizes the guy standing right in front of him is the exact dad he never met, the vibe gets seriously tense. Meanwhile, William assumes Johnny is just there to ask for money. He has absolutely no idea that Prudence is the one who actually invited him. Hearing that accusation about money totally crushes Johnny. He says he is only there to meet his dad who vanished from his life decades ago. But seeing this ice-cold attitude even after meeting his son years later, Johnny is incredibly disappointed and now completely filled with rage. Right before Johnny leaves, William asks him about Dottie. That's when Johnny tells him, "My mom wanted to be a singer. She probably told you that. But she couldn't make it happen because she had to raise me. She couldn't just sit around waiting for her big break. She had to work regular, ordinary jobs." Johnny is super pissed at his dad now, so he decides to just walk out. But Prudence tries to stop him. She reminds him that he is the son of a royal family. "You're your father's sole heir. You're the one who's supposed to become the Duke of Glaswick down the line." But Johnny talks about William, saying, "I absolutely do not want to be around this guy." Prudence asks him, "Okay, but tell me, where are you even going to go?" Johnny snaps back, annoyed. "I'll just crash at some hotel. What's the big deal?" Then, on his way out, Johnny spots an old car parked in the garage. He really likes that ride, but it is covered in a thick layer of dust, so he quickly scribbles a little message on the window saying the car needs to be cleaned. After that, he heads over to a nearby bar, where he fixes up an old music box for the bar owner. He hasn't been gone from the house for long before Prudence tracks him down there too. She tells Johnny that William wants him to stay inside the palace for one full week. But Johnny flat out refuses, saying he doesn't want to go at all. So Prudence offers him a deal. She tells Johnny, "Let's play a game of darts. If I win, you have to come back to the palace and stay there. And if you win, you can head back to America, and I'll agree to do whatever you ask for." Johnny agrees, thinking he is definitely going to beat this girl. But Prudence's aim is insanely good. She wins super easily. It turns out later that she is actually a professional player. Anyway, whatever the case, Johnny loses, so he agrees to head back to the palace. After showing him to his room, Prudence sits down to chill in the sitting area and starts scrolling through Johnny's social media posts. Right then, a maid named Annie walks in and catches Prudence smiling while looking at a picture of Johnny and his mom. Annie immediately jokes, "What's up? Do you like the guy or something?" But Prudence quickly shuts it down, saying, No, it's nothing like that." Anyway, the next morning when Prudence goes to Johnny's room, she finds him fixing up an old phonograph that hasn't worked in years. A little while later, she takes him for a bike ride so Johnny can get a good look at the Duke's estate. She explains that the Duke of Glaswick owns about 42,000 acres. Most of that land is for farming. There is also a private church on their property, along with a special burial ground for the royal family members. Prudence also mentions that William's dad had blown through the family's last remaining wealth and left behind a massive debt. After that, Prudence takes Johnny over to a farm where he is welcomed by an older guy named Finch. Johnny's eyes immediately lock onto a broken grinding machine that has been sitting there useless for about 10 years. When he asks about the pile of beets lying nearby, Finch explains that beets don't bring in much profit these days. He also tells him, "Your dad William is a really good guy. He never collected rent from the farmers who worked the Duke's land." After touring the farm while they are heading back to the palace, Prudence introduces Johnny to his cousin Alistair. If William didn't have a kid, Alistair is the one in line to become the next Duke. Then, walking through the fields, Prudence tells Johnny, "You really need to think about becoming the Duke. I absolutely do not want Alistair sitting on that throne." Then, she opens up and tells Johnny her own story. Her parents worked for the Duke's family for years. That's why she grew up right there in the palace. When she was just 8 years old, her parents were killed in an accident. At that time, William took her in and raised her exactly like his own daughter. He sent her to the best schools. He let her do whatever she wanted to do. Because of all that, Prudence was deeply grateful to William from the bottom of her heart. She wanted the next Duke to be someone who genuinely deserved it. Someone exactly like Johnny. Now, it wasn't long before VIP guests started rolling into the palace. That included Alistair and his mom. And both of them were getting a huge kick out of putting Johnny down every chance they got. They figured Johnny wouldn't know the first thing about the royal lifestyle, since he grew up as a regular, everyday guy in America. Even while horseback riding, Alistair tried to make him look bad. He was totally convinced Johnny had no idea how to ride a horse. But Johnny handled the horse super smoothly, which left everyone completely stunned. Not only that, he even saved Alistair from falling off. A little later, Johnny popped up in the kitchen, where he was making beet juice and handing it out to some of the staff. Annie mentioned, "At first, I absolutely hated this fruit because it tastes a little bitter." Right then, Prudence walked in and told everyone to get back to work. Then she tasted the juice herself and absolutely loved it too. That evening, Johnny got dressed up for a special dinner happening at the Duke's palace. When he saw Prudence in a gorgeous dress, he was completely mesmerized by how beautiful she looked. Anyway, during dinner, Johnny had a bit of a rough time with the first course. There was this weird-looking fish on the plate that totally killed his appetite. Alistair instantly jumped on the opportunity and started mocking him. "You probably don't know the first thing about royal table manners." "Oh, it's fine, I'll teach you later if you want." But Johnny didn't pay him any attention at all. He immediately cracked a joke that had all the guests at the table cracking up. That made it crystal clear he wasn't going to be intimidated by Alistair or his mom. For every piece of trash talk they threw his way, he had an even better comeback. At the end of the dinner, Alistair stood up and proudly stated, "I feel incredibly honored to be the next Duke." But right at that moment, Johnny stood up from his seat too and shocked everybody by saying, "Not you, I'm going to be the next Duke. I'm taking over my father's throne." Instantly, the whole vibe in the room shifted. Prudence's face lit up with joy and William looked incredibly happy too because he had always wanted his own son to take his place. Then William admitted in front of everyone that Johnny is his son and he's the one who will be the next Duke of Glaswick. Hearing this, Alistair and his mom completely lost it with rage. They went to talk to William privately afterward, but William stood his ground. He said, "Johnny is my real son. If he wants to be the Duke, that is his right." Meanwhile, Johnny and Prudence went to a bar to celebrate the news with their friends. That night, Johnny couldn't sleep for a long time, so he headed down to the garage and started working on that old car. A little while later, William showed up there too and asked Johnny, "Why do you want to be the Duke?" He also admitted, "When I became the Duke, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing either." Anyway, just chatting like that, they kept fixing up the car and slowly started understanding each other a little better. Then the next day, Prudence started teaching Johnny how to dance. They were prepping for an upcoming function. A ton of people from England's royal families were going to be there for the event. Prudence wanted to make sure Johnny didn't look out of place in front of them. During the dance lesson, Annie suddenly walked in and thanked Johnny and Prudence because they had also invited her boyfriend to the event. Soon enough, Prudence found out that Johnny had also invited Finch and the farmers who had been working that land for years. Hearing all this made Prudence a little emotional, especially realizing how little time Johnny had actually spent there, yet he still cared about everyone working on the estate. Now soon during their practice, the vibe got a little romantic. Johnny and Prudence got super close and it looked like they were just about to kiss, but right then Annie and some staff members spotted them and they both stopped dead in their tracks. Anyway, Johnny went back to the garage to work on that old car again and William started helping him out too. Later, while they were tuning up the engine a bit, William opened up about his past. He told him, I never actually got any letters from your mom and I had absolutely no idea I even had a son. He also said, I wrote to your mom plenty of times, but I never got a single reply. Eventually, I just assumed Dottie had moved on with her life. That's when Johnny told him, Mom never got any letters from you either. That's when it hit them both that someone had intentionally kept them apart. Anyway, Johnny then told William, try starting the engine once. The second William turned the key, that old car roared to life. In that exact moment, pure joy lit up both their eyes and they started laughing like a couple of kids. On the flip side, Alistair snuck into William's study room and dug up Johnny's birth certificate. As soon as he saw it, he smirked like some brand new scheme was brewing in his head. The next day, Johnny took William for a drive in that exact same old car. Now, after getting washed and polished, that ride was shining like it was brand new. Meanwhile, Prudence and the butler were watching all this from a distance, totally thrilled to see the father and son getting so close. Then they headed over to the farm where Johnny had also fixed that grinding machine that had been broken for years. Now, Finch and the rest of the farmers were using that machine to make fresh juice, which was pulling in some seriously good cash for them. William was ecstatic seeing all this and immediately invited everyone to join the celebration. But when they got back to the palace, Alistair and his mom were already there waiting for them. That's when they dropped a massive bombshell. They revealed that Johnny was actually born after William and Dottie's marriage had been annulled. Which basically meant that by law, Johnny was considered an illegitimate child and legally couldn't become the Duke. Hearing this completely pulled the rug out from under William and Johnny. But even still, he was just happy that he at least got the chance to know his dad. Now, he had no reason to stick around, so he decided to leave, even though Prudence kept begging him to stay. Johnny just told her he never really belonged there anyway, and then he walked away. Now, Johnny went straight to the bar where everyone had already heard the news. Everyone was super bummed out. They decided they absolutely weren't going to that celebration without Johnny. Meanwhile, Annie and the palace staff were feeling the exact same way. Now, to support Johnny, they also decided they weren't going to show up to the event. Back in her office, Prudence was looking over Johnny's birth certificate again. Suddenly, she caught a specific detail. As soon as she realized what it meant, she bolted out to find Johnny and told him to wait. She told Johnny, you have to come to the dance, just for me. Then right before the event kicked off, William was greeting the guests, but then he was completely stunned. When he saw Dottie walking in, he literally couldn't hide his excitement, and he immediately brought her inside to introduce her to everyone. A little while later, Johnny also showed up to the dance with Prudence and his friends. Meanwhile, Alistair and his mom were absolutely fuming watching all this, because they hated every second of it. In their minds, what were ordinary people even doing at a royal celebration? Right in the middle of this crowd, Johnny suddenly spotted his mom. He was totally shocked, because he had no idea his mom was even coming. Then William stepped up in front of all the guests and completely opened up about the feelings he'd been bearing for years. He said, in just 1 week, my entire life has completely changed. Because of my son, my old memories came rushing back, and now I feel like I can actually get back the life I lost decades ago. Then he announced in front of everyone that Johnny would be his next heir. The second he heard this, Alistair jumped right in and started protesting the decision. He insisted, Johnny is an illegitimate child. Suddenly, Prudence stepped right in the middle of it and dropped the truth. She revealed that the signature on the marriage annulment papers belonging to William was totally forged. This can be easily proven if you just compare that signature to William's real handwriting. William is left-handed, and the way he signs his name is so unique that it's insanely hard for anyone to copy. Hearing all this, Alistair totally panicked and started babbling nonsense like, so what? It's already signed, isn't it? But William immediately snapped with a heavy voice, get the hell out of here. Then a few moments later, Johnny stepped up and hugged his dad tight. After that, Johnny laid out his future plans. He announced that he wanted to start a juice company, partnering up with the farmers who had been living on that land for generations. Then at the end of the story, Johnny pulled Prudence in for a dance. The rest of the guests joined in on the dance floor, and the whole hall was just completely filled with joy. After the dance, Johnny took Prudence out to the garden. There he opened up his heart and confessed his love for her. Prudence said yes and kissed him. So our hero became the Duke and got the girl too. And with that, our movie ends. Hope you liked the recap. If you reached the end, don't forget to leave a like on the video and write us a nice comment, as you always do. And for those watching us for the first time, subscribe to the channel to see all the upcoming recaps. See you in the next movie. Peace.